that when we're driving your car, you've got this big windshield in front of you, and it's there for a reason, so that you can see everything that's in front of you, right? Think about the rear view mirror. The rear view mirror is really small, and it's just up there, and it's just meant to be looked, to make sure that we're safe with the cars that are behind us. But in life, most people spend most of their life looking in the rear view mirror. All right? We can't drive a car looking in the rear view mirror. But I'd like you to at least journal and write down a situation that you initially viewed as negative. All right? And then I want you to write down a new perspective on how this experience might have been a stepping stone for growth or learning. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Happiness Solved. I'm your host, Sandee Sgarlata, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the central idea of everything happens for a reason, and that things happen for us, not to us. So I just want you to consider for a moment that every situation, even the most challenging ones, carries a hidden gift that is meant for your growth, right? I believe that we're here to evolve as a species, right? In order to do so, we have to stop holding on to things that have happened in our past, right? We need to stop looking in the rear view mirror. And I've been talking about this concept a little bit more lately because it just makes so much sense. Most of us drive a car and we've got this big windshield that we're looking out. I didn't make this up. I've heard it from somebody. I'm sure you've heard it too. But it's just a wonderful reminder that when we're driving your car, you've got this big windshield in front of you, and it's there for a reason, so that you can see everything that's in front of you, right? Think about the rear view mirror. The rear view mirror is really small, and it's just up there, and it's just meant to be looked, to make sure that we're safe with the cars that are behind us. But in life, most people spend most of their life looking in the rear view mirror. All right? We can't drive a car looking in the rear view mirror. It's not going to work. You're going to have an accident, right? This is not brain surgery here. So that's why I use that rear view mirror analogy, because we have to start looking forward. And in order to do so, we all have so many situations that happen to us in life. And yes, things happen to you, right? There's no doubt about that. However, what we're going to talk about here today is how to kind of shift that perspective. So let me give you, I'll give you a brief synopsis of what happened to me last night. And that's what prompted me to do this episode today. So I'm walking my dog, as I do every night before we go to bed. It was about 9:45. It was dark. It was freezing cold. We were getting ready to have an ice storm. It's February. And I have a 10-pound Yorkie poo, little tiny thing. Thinks he's an 85-pound bull mastiff, but he's this little guy who's tough as can be. Like, he is a little badass. But we're walking, and all of a sudden, I see it just happened so fast. We got attacked by another dog. I'm grateful to say that I've never been attacked before in my life, ever. And it was the scariest thing I'd ever been through, because here I've got my baby, literally my baby, he'll be 5 in March of this year, 2025. And I tried pulling up the leash, and I couldn't get him off the ground. I had to reach down, and I grabbed his collar and I pulled him up. And as I was pulling him up, the dog was still clamped down on him, and I managed to get him away, pulled him in my arms, and the dog continued to be jumping on me until the owner came over and picked the dog up. Now, mind you, the dog got out of the house, ran across the street, and attacked us. And so I checked over the dog. He was completely fine. And, she kept asking me if I was okay. And I was like, I'm fine. I'm more worried about this little guy. And I said a few words that, in hindsight, I may not have, because she was so worried about him biting me. And I said something like, well, if your dog was biting me, I would have been kicking him. And granted, I'm a huge dog lover, but there's no excuse for dogs attacking other dogs and humans, right? Completely unprovoked. So in any event, we got home, dog's fine. I know her address. I know where she lives. She was very gracious about it and was very apologetic. And I get it. Things happen. But for me, what happened with that situation is I'm like, what was the reason behind this? Right. And I've been around the sun enough times that I know that things happen for a reason and we're meant to grow. We're meant to evolve. Okay. And so I'm still working through this because it's been less than 24 hours since this happened. And at the same time, I know that it's going to be revealed to me and I'm going to understand, what I learned from this situation. So, I reported it to the county. It's just an online form. I reported it to do the right thing, just in case if this dog ever really hurts somebody else, another person or another dog, that there's something on record. And that's all I can do. Fine, moving forward. But the thing is that everything does happen for a reason. And that's kind of the tone of what we're going to talk about today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explore the philosophy behind situations happening for you, not to you. I'm going to offer some techniques to decipher these moments that will hopefully help shift your mindset, and eventually you'll be able to view past challenges with neutrality, okay? Because that is the key here. So I want you to just take a moment and think of a recent challenge or situation that's been put in front of you. And I want to encourage you to note one small lesson or insight that might have emerged from that experience, right? Even if it's not obvious right away. Now, keep in mind, just think of that one experience, and you can revisit this thought as you progress through this episode. All right. So let's talk about understanding the concept of for you, not to you. So this is all about changing your perspective. And a lot of times it's really hard for people, right? Because there's a lot of factors at play. And I don't want to get into all of the nitty gritty of how our mind works, but it's basically in our DNA, right? And I've talked about this before. It's in our DNA. Our DNA is there to protect us. We've got that fight or flight gene in us. It's going to take who knows how long. We don't even know enough about DNA to decipher how long it's going to take to get that gene where we've evolved out of that fight or flight, because we're not, running from predators. We're not fighting or hunting for our food. So it's still there. So what happens is these things come up and we immediately go to the negativity, right? But what we want to do is this shift in your perception is going to shift you from being a victim of circumstances to being an active participant in your personal growth, right? And we want to get to a point where you're able to see challenges as opportunities that will empower you to learn and evolve, because it's all about taking your power back, right? If we're in a victim mentality and we're in that mindset of this happened to me, you're giving your power away. All right. And if you're listening to this podcast, your emotional intelligence is high enough that you deserve more for yourself. Okay. Got to take that power back. So it's a common mindset that it happened to me versus it happened for me. All right. But what you have to remember is when you're saying it happened for me, it fosters a sense of ownership and possibility. And so that's what's really the important part to get from this, is that when you're a victim, you're giving your power away, right? When you realize that this happened for me, what you're doing is you're taking ownership and the possibility, because every situation that happens in your life, you have a choice. You can either be the victim or you can be the victor, right? I know all these little colloquialisms, but they're true and they're real. Being a victim is giving your power away. Being a victor is taking that power back, and you're taking ownership, and it's empowering, and there's possibility because you're going to learn from it. And the next time anything happens, you're going to be stronger. This is how you build that resilience muscle. All right. Just like lifting weights at the gym and pumping up your arms, which I need to do some more reps of. The resilience is like a muscle. All right. That's what makes you stronger. So what I'd like you to do, and if you're driving, Well, don't do it now, but I'd like you to at least journal and write down a situation that you initially viewed as negative. All right. And then I want you to write down a new perspective on how this experience might have been a stepping stone for growth or learning. And I invite you to reflect on the shift in your emotional response. All right. We're going to keep unfolding and keep deciphering this. All right. So it's important to have a sense of self-reflection and active inquiry into your life events. All right. And the way you do that is journaling, meditation, speaking with a trusted friend, or therapist, because what you want to do is you want to try to extract meaning from those difficult situations. All right. And remember that everything that happens to you, there's always a hidden gift. All right. Every challenge that we face carries lessons, new opportunities, or insights that might otherwise not have been revealed to you. Let me give you an example of what happened to me in March of 2016. It's a really, really tough year because in the fall of 2015, both my husband and my father became very ill and were both hospitalized at the very same time. Now, at that time, my son did not have his driver's license. I was remarried, but still his father was not in the picture. And so it was just me and my son. And my husband was actually in the hospital for 60 days. In February of that year, he finally was released. And around the same time, my father passed away. And I was never able to go visit my father, to be by his bedside to say goodbye, because my husband was in the hospital. I had a 15-year-old son who couldn't drive and needed somebody to care for him. I couldn't just leave him. My husband was in Baltimore, by the way. I live in Virginia. He was at Johns Hopkins for 30 days. So I couldn't go visit my husband. I couldn't see my father, who was in Delaware. It was a really, really rough time. And at the same time, I had this job that I had just started. It was close to my house. It was amazing. There was a lot of challenges there with a new boss that had come in, who really kind of hated me at hello and never really gave me a chance. But that's a topic for another day. Long story short, they eliminated my position. That's never happened to me before. That was the very first time I'd ever been laid off from a job. And I remember sitting in front of the VP of Human Resources. And I was like, you've got 5,000 employees. There's got to be a position for me. Because see, for me, in that moment, I was so caught up in the fact that I had lost my job and I had a son. And from a financial perspective, I was a single mother and I needed that income, that I couldn't even think of the bigger picture. And I was selfishly wanting to stay in that role because it was literally 7 minutes from my house. And that's huge in the DC metro area, to be that close to your job. I mean, on a bad day, hitting every light, it would take me 10 minutes to get to work. So anyway, he looked at me, the VP of Human Resources looked at me and said, Sandee, this is a blessing in disguise. And I probably said some explicit, some foul words under my breath, because I was like, really? But I gracefully walked away and came home to care for my husband and was applying for jobs, eventually landed a job that was the most amazing opportunity I could have ever dreamed of. And I was there until I retired from corporate in October of 2023. So I was at that company for 7.5 years. And looking back, I realized all of the lessons, the many, many lessons that happened. And yes, it was a very challenging time in my life because of, just losing my father. I thought my husband was going to die. They actually didn't think he was going to live. He pulled through, thankfully. And we celebrate 10 years of marriage this summer. And because he got sick 6 months after we got married. Okay. And I was like, whoa. But anyway, there were so many lessons in that situation. And I'm so grateful for that today. So that's what I'm talking about, right? It was a career setback, but it led me to another amazing opportunity. That company that I was laid off from, they ended up being balled out and a lot of changes and everything. So it really was a blessing in disguise for me. And so, I'm very grateful to this day. So So that's what I'm talking about, finding that meaning in those situations. So what I'd like you to do now is I want you to think about a couple of questions. All right. So these are reflective questions that you can use in journaling. So think about that situation. And I want you to write down, what did I learn about myself from this situation? Okay. What did I learn about myself from this situation? The next question is, how has this challenge made me more resilient or resourceful? Okay. How has this challenge made me more resilient or resourceful? And next, what opportunities might have emerged because of this experience? What opportunities might have emerged because of this experience? So you want to spend just a few minutes, 5-10 minutes, to write down your thoughts and see any patterns or insights that may come up. And I want you to avoid your brain, because your brain may say, why did this happen to me? Why me? All of those. Don't go there, because when you're asking the question, why me? Why did this happen? Chances are your brain is going to give you reasons that you're not going to like. So that's why you want to empower yourself with, what did I learn about myself from this situation? How has this challenge made me more resilient or resourceful? And lastly, what opportunities might have emerged because of this experience? Okay, do you see the difference in how I reframed that? Okay, next we're going to talk about changing your perception. So what you want to do is you want to recognize your role in shaping your experience, okay? So I want to emphasize that while we cannot control every event that happens, we have the power over our reactions and our interpretations. What you want to think about is that by doing so, right, by recognizing that you have the power over your reactions and your interpretations, is that this empowers you to see the challenges as personal growth opportunities. Everything is an opportunity for growth, okay? All right, let's talk about mindfulness and self-awareness. So I talk about self-awareness a lot, but being present and mindful in the moment, all right, it will help you to prevent immediate or negative judgments, all right? And that's hard to do, and it takes a lot of practice, but that's okay. We're going to work on that. And if you follow these steps, you'll be able to get to a point where you're recognizing about being present. So you have that negative thought that comes in, and you're like, okay, yep, I hear you. That's a negative thought. And then what needs to happen then is you want to, sometimes taking a deep breath, doing some deep breathing exercise. You want to acknowledge those negative thoughts without judgment, and you want to let them pass. I kind of take it a little bit further, because when I have a negative thought, I know that this is my inner child that is a little confused, and it's kind of screaming out. And back to the whole driving mentality. Side note, I interviewed somebody who has a book that talks about this. It was really funny. So I love that episode. You'll be there at some point. Her name is, I just interviewed, her name is Ellen Shute. And she has a book called What Drives You. So here's the thing. For me, when I have that negative thought, and I know that this is something that's going to really impede my growth, so to speak, I have a name for her, and I tell her to get in the back seat. I visualize putting the seatbelt on her. I tell her to shut up, because I'm in charge and I'm driving the car today, not her. And that she's got to sit there and keep her mouth shut and let me be in charge. And for me, because I'm a little stubborn and sometimes it takes me a little bit longer to learn lessons, I have to talk to her that way, because she's a little girl. She's trying to slow me down. She's afraid. She's scared. I get that, but that's why I put her in the back seat. I keep her safe with the seatbelt on, and let me take the drive. All right. So another way that you can reframe, because this is all about cognitive reframing. All right. And this is about challenging your automatic negative responses by asking, is there another way to see this? right? Another thing that I sometimes I say to myself, is that true? Is it true? Like asking that question, is it true? Because we come up with these, perceptions, those turn into our beliefs, which shapes our reality, and then it shapes our behaviors. And so you want to really question that before it gets to that point where it becomes a behavior. So, is there another way to see this? Is it true? So, let me just give you an outline to do like a cognitive reframing worksheet. So, what you want to do is you want to write down the negative thought, and then you want to list evidence that contradicts that thought. Right? Is it true? Is there another way to look at this? Right? There's, that's the evidence that's going to contradict that thought. And then what you can do is you can write a more balanced or positive reinterpretation. All right. You can also do some visualization exercises. I'm not going to do a guided meditation with you right now, but what you can do is imagine the challenging event as a scene that gradually transforms into a beautiful painting, right? Symbolizing growth and potential. I encourage you to spend a few minutes visualizing a past setback and changing into a moment of realization or new opportunity, right? I also encourage you to pick one daily minor frustration and consciously reframe it using those techniques. And I want to remind you that this is going to take practice, because shifting your perception takes time. And with practice, it just becomes more natural. And it's not always easy. I mean, I'm standing here, telling you about all of this. Is it easy for me? Not always. No, it just depends on what it is. Totally depends on what it is. Just real quick, going back to the dog being attacked, what really helped me today, because my brain started kicking in and I started telling myself, okay, are you overreacting? I didn't know. I've never been attacked before. Was I overreacting? I had no idea. And then I talked to a good friend of mine who's 6'2", 200 plus pounds. I don't know. He's been losing weight. No clue how much he weighs, but he's a big guy. And he's got a dog, a much bigger dog than I do. And he was like, Sandee, do you remember how me and my dog were attacked by a pit bull? And he said, it was the most terrifying thing I have ever been through. And he kind of talked me off the ledge. And hearing this big guy who's like my little brother, he's my husband's best friend, and he's like my little brother. And hearing him talk about that and how he felt it was the most traumatic thing. And he's actually like a sharpshooter. I've gone shooting with him before. Like, he's incredible. He was in the military and he was a sniper or whatever. So he's really good. This is like a former sniper, and he was terrified. So that kind of helped me put it in perspective. Just remember, and earlier I said, talk to somebody else. And that was just really helpful. And I didn't even call him. He just called my husband today. And I happened to be like, oh, did you hear what happened to me and Buster? And so that was something that really, really helped me, because then I realized, okay, you know what? This is real. It happened. And now I'm in that frame of mind where I'm just trying to figure out, okay, what is the lesson in this? Sometimes our lesson in these types of situations is literally just learning to forgive. And sometimes the lesson is simply another opportunity to practice forgiveness. And I wanted to make sure I said that because it's not in my notes. But that's really, really important, that there may be times when you're reflecting back on things that have happened and you can't figure it out. Sometimes it's simply learning how to forgive. I've got a situation right now going on, and I'm still trying to figure out how to forgive. And it's like, I forgive, and then all of a sudden I get triggered by a thought and I start rehashing the situation, start getting all upset. And then I'm like, I start, in my mind trying to practice forgiveness. And so there's some situations that are even harder, but at least I know that in the situation, not with the dog fight, but the other one, I know that that's what it's about. I know that I didn't do anything wrong, but I know that it's an opportunity for me to practice forgiveness. And it's a really difficult lesson in forgiveness for me because I don't want to forgive, right? There's times I don't want to do that. I'm upset. I'm angry about it, and I'm still working through those emotions, and that's okay, right? But for me, that's a big lesson for me is being able to forgive with grace and dignity and love, most especially. All right. Next, we want to achieve neutrality. And that is all about looking back objectively. Okay. So we want to like adopt this observer mindset. All right. So when I talk about looking at things with neutrality, it's the ability to reflect on past events without being clouded by intense emotions. And it's a really, really hard part, right? And the situation that I was just talking about with forgiveness, that's where I am right now. There's still some intense emotions, and that's clouding my ability to look at it with neutrality. But, we're all a work in progress. This is progress, not perfection. It's totally okay. You're going to get there when you get there. I'm going to get there when I get there, and I know that. So when you have this neutrality and this observer mindset, what happens is it just leads to clearer insights and balanced decisions. So let's talk about how to cultivate neutrality. And it's probably better to start with something a little bit minor, right? So what we want to do is you want to look back at a past event, and I encourage you to write about it as if you are a third-party observer. So it's not you telling the story, it's your friend telling the story about what happened to you. Because what's going to happen is it's going to be much more objective, right? This happened to her, this happened to her, this happened to her. And I want you to try to avoid using words like, I felt like this, or I was hurt. What you want to do is just write down the facts and what can be objectively learned. By doing that, you're able to look back with neutrality. Let me give you an example here. So I've been working with a coach for almost 18 months now. And we've been working on dealing with some of the childhood trauma that I've experienced, because there's so much trauma that I experienced. And some of it was when I was very little and I have no memory of it. Okay. But it's still there. I'm still holding it on. It's still there. And so that's what have been working on. So I write about this in my books. If you read my book, and you may remember this part where I talk about how I get very irritated with my husband because he eats very loudly. You know what? We all eat loudly. It's kind of hard. And so I practice this method that my coach worked with me on. And so the next time he's sitting there joyfully just eating his dinner, and I'm 4 or 5 feet away, we were sitting in different places eating. And I just start getting irritated about it. And so I put my hand on my heart. And I was like, okay, when was the first time, I'm asking myself this question, when was the first time I experienced being told that it was wrong to be a noisy eater? So what happens then when you get into this is memories will pop up. And so your memory, like, okay, was that the first time or was there one before that? Because what you want to do is you want to get to the first time that you remember something like that happening, where you learned this, because this is all stuff we've learned. And what I remembered is that my father I was raised by a very strict Catholic. He was my stepfather. And but he was my father for 47 years. My biological father died when I was a baby. And he was very strict, and no elbows on the table, hand on the lap, chew with your mouth shut. And it was always this, turmoil at the dinner table while he was trying to get all of us in shape, right? And drill sergeant and learning how to eat like a lady or a gentleman sitting at the table. Now, while that did serve me years later, when I met my ex-husband and I was 21 years old and he was a first-year law associate and we were going out to dinner with all these successful lawyers, I was able to sit there and hold myself like a lady. It did serve me. But what it didn't do, or actually what it did do, is that I took on my father's angst about him and his own stuff, right? I took that on. That was his stuff, not mine. Okay. And once you recognize that, you're like, whoa, wow, I don't have to take that on. That's his stuff. That's not mine. Now, that was about 30 days ago. And since then, I can only recall just a couple of times where I started, because what happens, I just start getting irritated. Like it just starts building up, and I'm like, imagine the face getting red. It's not that bad, but that's how I feel, right? And I've noticed that it's gotten lesser and lesser. It's something I'm still working on, okay? And that's all right. But that's what this is about, because I don't want to get upset with my husband. He's just sitting there eating his dinner. He's not hurting me. He's not hurting anybody else. I've got a really good sense of hearing. Kudos to me. I can hear really well. And it's not his fault. That's my stuff. It's not his. And I'm taking it out on him and making him wrong, when really it was just my father's stuff. It wasn't mine. So that's all I have to say about that. But I like to try to give you tangible explanations and actual real life experiences, just to kind of help you kind of wrap your head around this. So what you want to do is just have regular reflection, set some time aside, maybe once a week. You don't have to do it all the time, but you want to just take time for calm, judgment-free reflection on recent experiences. Maybe even have a reflection hour where you can, review journal entries or events from the past week and focus on what lessons that you may have learned rather than blaming. All right. So other things that you can do, I'm just going to give you a couple of journaling prompts, such as, what would a compassionate friend say about this experience? What could I learn from this experience if I removed all judgments? Right? What would a compassionate friend say about this experience? And what could I learn from this if I removed all judgments? So having a neutral perspective will enable you to appreciate your growth without the emotional weight of any negativity. It's going to help you prepare for future challenges, and it's going to help you do that with a much greater resilience. All right, let's bring it all together. What we want to do is we want to apply these concepts in daily life. All right. So when we're shifting our mindset, what happens is you transform everyday challenges into growth opportunities, because we're always being challenged. All right. Here's the thing. I've already given you a few examples of things that happened in my own life. All right. But what happens is, you hear stories all the time, and pay attention to those stories, because people will always share their stories who have successfully reinterpreted their adversity. I could give you more examples about myself, but I've already been talking for 32 minutes and kind of want to wrap this up. But the thing is like, when you're able to see things as them happening for you, not to you, everything just flows a lot easier, because things happen and you're able to reflect on it. You're like, maybe not in the moment, but you're able to reflect on it after time has passed and be like, yeah, I'm stronger because of this. Being able to look back with neutrality is such a powerful, powerful, powerful way to live. It's so much better than being judgmental, being resentful, because all you're doing when you're resenting another person is you're giving them your power. They're taking your power away. You're letting them have power over you. Okay. So some of the things that you can do so that you can have daily integration is start each day with a short affirmation or meditation that reinforces the idea that every experience is a teacher for you, right? Maybe you can create like a growth log where each day you can note one event and one lesson that you learned. So I just encourage you to start really focusing on this every day. what were the challenges? Just write it down. What were the challenges you encountered? What was a positive takeaway or lesson that you learned from it? Because over time, this will serve as a powerful reminder of your resilience and progress. Remember, I always talk about celebrating your wins. And that's what that log in this journal will serve as just a reminder that you're growing. You've got resilience. All right. So today, I hope this was really great for you. Every situation holds potential for growth through reflection, cognitive reframing, and mindfulness. By practicing those, we can learn to see things as challenges, as opportunities. Again, everything happens for a reason. I know that you've heard that so many times, but it's really, really so true. And I invite you, if you've had any growth moments, share them with me. Email me at sandeesgarlata.com. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And I encourage you to practice one of the exercises that we discussed today and observe the shift in your progress. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. I hope that this was valuable. Feel free to leave comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to leave comments. Let me know what you thought. And if there's another topic that you would like me to dive into, please let me know. If you go to happinesssolved.com, there's a contact form. Just fill that out and send it to me, and I'll respond. But I'd love to hear, what is it that you want to hear about? Is there an area that you're struggling with? Is there a question that you personally would like me to answer? Please let me know. And again, thank you so much for listening today. And I hope that you and your family are happy and safe, and that your lives are filled with peace, joy, and lots of love. Take care, everyone.